Welcome to the Sharkpreneur podcast with Kevin Harrington and Seth Greene. Kevin Harrington is the inventor of the infomercial, one of the original sharks from the hit TV show Shark Tank, and has generated over $5 billion in TV and digital direct response sales. Seth Greene is the world's first trusted authority on cutting-edge direct response marketing, a best-selling author, and the only 3-time Marketer of the Year nominee. On the podcast, Kevin and Seth interview sharkpreneurs who share straight talk on what it takes to explode your business.
Why do so many businesses struggle while others seem to explode overnight? Do you wish you had the secret to this type of exponential growth? Now, I've scaled more than 20 businesses to over $100 million, and it's not just luck. In my new book with Mark Tim, Mentor to Millions, you'll learn the repeatable framework I use in all my business ventures for massive success. Order at kevinmentor.com and get over $1,000 in bonuses. Head to kevinmentor.com.
Welcome to the podcast. This is your host, Seth Greene. Today I have the good fortune to be joined by Ron Karr. Ron's worked with leaders on 6 continents to eliminate risk, gain buy-in, and achieve better results faster with the velocity mindset. His presentation and services has generated over $1 billion in incremental revenues for his clients. He's the author of 5 count 'em books, including his latest bestseller, The Velocity Mindset. Ron, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Seth. Thanks for having me.
Our pleasure. Let's go back in time a little bit. How did you get started?
Oh, God. It was a long time ago, 1988 to be exact. Actually, we just celebrated our 33rd anniversary. It was a family tragedy that got me into this business, believe it or not. I was in management in the computer industry. There was a lot of turmoil. And I had to navigate a tragedy like I've never seen in my life before. The good news is that it worked out all right. But what I learned from that, Seth, was that life is too short. So if you're not doing something that you're passionate about, you better start doing it. And because of the upheaval in the computer industry, I started to go on my own business, and my EVP actually funded me. So I started a sales training business that morphed into advising board of directors, keynote speaking, advisory services, as well as consulting, all on how to build a growing brand, if you will.
I'm sure I know the longer version of that story. Obviously, it's in the books, and we'll tell everyone where to go to get them at the end. Let's talk about, how did you come up with the velocity? What is the velocity mindset, and how did you kind of innovate that?
So, Seth, when you hear the word velocity, what's the first word that comes to your mind?
Speed.
Yes, and most people think that. But if that's all we think about when we think about velocity, most often what you're going to wind up with is burnout. See, Seth, the physics definition of velocity is speed with direction. And what do I mean by direction? It's the end result, the thing that you're after. So the best way that I can explain it, you have to start with the end in sight first. So if you go to an airport, let's say I'm in Florida, so if you go to Fort Lauderdale Airport, you want to go to Newark, and you ask the pilot where we're going, and he says, wherever the winds take us, would you stay on that plane? And
Probably not.
Probably not. But the way the pilots work is they don't start in the beginning, they start in the end. So they say, well, I want to go to Newark. They work their way backwards to Fort Lauderdale. What are the 3 waypoints, knowing if they pass those on the way? Then they calculate the storms and all the obstacles, and they find the best possible way to get you to Newark safely. That's velocity. So if we now translate that to an individual, most of us are task-oriented, not purpose-oriented. So by direction, I mean your purpose. What are you trying to achieve? Because if you let that drive you, that's going to dictate the right actions you should be taking. Otherwise, we're all doing our to-do list. At the end of the day, we're exhausted and we had no time for anything. And then we ask ourselves, what did we really accomplish? And most often the answer is nothing. So to your question is, how did I come up with this? I've been talking about velocity for a long time because my whole thing with my clients was, what's the fastest way to where you want to get to? I was also president of the National Speakers Association. And when I gave up the gavel in June of 2014, I knew I was facing a series of operations, mostly for my back. Tiger had 1 level fuse. I had 9 levels fuse. So for the next 3 years, I was off the speaking circuit. I was recovering in a lot of pain. And you start evaluating your life. And, there were some great successes I had, but there were also some things I didn't even do. And when I asked myself why I didn't do them, it was one thing. It was the stories that prevented me as to why I didn't think I could do them. So I got a new passion, Seth. I've always been in sales and leadership, helping my clients, and I still do that. But my passion right now is to get the bigger population of the world thinking about, what it is they really want to achieve. So at the end of a given period of time, whether it's a year, their life, whatever, they're not waking up disappointed and it's too late. And so the premise of the book, The Velocity Mindset, well, the secondary title is How Leaders Eliminate Resistance, Gain Buy-in, and Achieve Better Results Faster. But the whole premise of the book is, what would the world look like if everybody acted like a leader and not a victim of circumstance? And what I mean by being a leader is, how do you lead your life? How do you lead others? How do you influence others? And how do you take control of your destiny without blaming others or anything else? The first question that any leader worth their weight in salt asks, whenever something happens, good or bad, they always ask themselves this one central question before they start looking at anybody else. What could I have done differently? And that's what a leader does. A leader is always like increasing the game, upping the antics, increasing the skill sets so they could do it better and be an example of what it means to improve. But more importantly, the reason they do that is because they know that they control their destiny. At the end of the day, they don't want to be disappointed.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, I know that you've advised board of directors of all kinds of different companies and organizations. Why in the book, why do you talk about why we should have a board meeting with ourselves, and what does that mean?
Well, that goes back to the question, what could I do differently? So I came up with that because my first sales job was selling copiers way back when. And I was seduced by Royal Business Machines because they wanted to hire me. And they said, look at this copier. It's the first of its kind. No more liquid to mess up the clothes. It's a dry bond copier. No mess, no fuss, 15 crisp copies. And I said, where's the collator? Don't worry about it. It'll come out in 6 months. Duplicator. Don't worry about it. It'll come out in 6 months. So I went and bought it, and then I started selling. And I go, knocking on doors and speaking to office managers. And the first thing out of their mouths, I would say, I'm selling a copy. And they say, well, great. Can you compete with the thing on the third floor, the Xerox? Can it duplicate? Nope. Can it, collate? Nope. Well, come back when you can. Well, after being kicked out enough times with the door starting to hurt my butt as it kept swinging backwards, I said, we need to start reevaluating this thing. So I had a board meeting. Me, myself, and I went to where you go in New Jersey, a diner. And I started asking myself, what's going on here? I said, I need to start making a living. What's the problem? I don't have the other features to compete. Well, you got to, control your destiny. You don't know when that stuff's going to come. What are you talking about? A copier. What's the response? They compare me to Xerox. So what can you do to change the conversation? And I thought about it, and a copier, Seth, is nothing more than a communication vehicle. So on my next call, I went into this office manager and I said, would you agree that a copier is nothing more than a communication vehicle? And she said, absolutely. I said, well, what's your biggest challenges when it comes to that? Seth, it was like she started laying down on the therapist couch. She goes, can we talk? I take Sam or Beth, on the first floor to go up to the third floor for one copy. By the time I get up there, chit chat, then wait behind all those big jobs and come back down, it could take 2 hours. And I asked her, how often does this happen? She goes, try the equivalent of 2 full-time employees. I said, wow, would you like them back? She goes, how? I said, look, I'm not competing with the third floor. All right. You got a great machine there. Keep it. I'm here to fill in your gaps. This machine, 15 copies a minute, crisp, clear bond copy. Put one on every floor. You'll get those 2 full-time employees back. And I started selling 3 at a time. What changed? Not the copier, not my product or service. It was me that changed. It was the conversation, but it would never have happened if I didn't sit down calmly, look at what was happening, what was not happening, and coming up with a new way of trying it to see if we would get different results. That's what we talked about with that personal board meeting.
Yeah, that is absolutely brilliant, repositioning and changing the conversation from apples to apples to oranges.
Well, yes, and it goes back to one thing. If the actions you're taking are not giving you the reactions you want, All you have to do is change the actions.
I mean, you talked about that in the book, how pilots are off course. I think it's something like 90-something% of the time on the way to their destination. How does that fit in your board meeting with yourself with what you talk about in terms of the art of the pause?
So, well, that is the art of the pause. I was pausing. I was taking time out to evaluate the situation. The thing about velocity, if what you're doing is not working, the old rule of insanity, that's not velocity, but keep going. Velocity sometimes, and this is really what freaks people out. You want to gain velocity? Sometimes you have to stop. You have to stop, re-examine, and then try it again. And that's when you're going to gain velocity. But if you don't stop and you keep going, you get emotional around it, and it just adds to worse actions, what are you left with?
A lot of times, companies, entrepreneurs, we make these grandiose plans. And it might even be whatever software we use or whatever venture capital or investment firm we're looking for has us do this 100, 200, 300 page giant plan. Business plan that sits in a binder on a shelf and actually never gets touched after we get the financing or whatever we're doing for it. You talk about how you could tackle any challenge with one sheet of paper. What does that tell us a little bit about that?
So I call it the clean piece of paper. And the best way to examine it is to give you a case study. So there was this multinational chemical manufacturer in which I was brought into several divisions, spoke at the divisions. They all loved it. They all did well. There's one division that had me speak. I saddled up to the VP and we started talking. And I said, so tell me more about your business. And he goes, look, we created a reagent that cut in half the cost of mining copper. Took 20 years to come out. When we brought it to the market in the mid-'80s, we saved a lot of copper mines from going bankrupt. And he said, next week we got a big meeting with the sourcing team of the biggest copper mining company in the world. And I said, so what does it look like? They said, well, we're number 3 in quality, but we created this industry. And I said, well, they're probably trying to, put you down the size. How much demand do you have? 25%. We need more. And it's coming up for bid. Can you help us? I said, sure. So I flew out that Friday to walk them through a process. And I asked them the first question. I said, what do you want as a result of my intervention? They said, we want to win the bid. And I said, that was not the question I asked. Take out a clean piece of paper. Forget about the past. Right now, that industry, the only way they buy is bid for supply, lowest price every 3 years. That's what you know, and that's your experiences. Forget about that. What do you want to create? What do you want it to be? Fill out that clean piece of paper. And the passion came out. They said, why do we have to bid? We started this industry and we saved them. I said, so what do you want? We want a negotiated agreement. I said, great. How long? They usually buy 3 years, 10 years, life of the patent. I said, great. You got 25%. What do you want? 75%. And then I said to them, look, what you're telling me is you want a negotiated deal, 10 years, 75%. And I said, you could really do that if you want, but it takes a different set of actions to get to that result than it does just to win a bid. And then, Seth, they asked me the fateful question. They said, how are we going to do that? And my answer was, I have no clue. And they go, what? And I said, look, I can tell already in my heart of hearts that you're not even doing 1/10 of what we're going to be talking about. We have the direction, where we want to go. Clarity of the direction, exactly how we're going to do it. And what comes up only comes from the journey. If we don't start walking the journey, start coming up with questions, start asking those questions, reassessing the information, seeing what it looks like, manipulating the information so we can see what we still don't know, go ask those questions. The answers will come from the questions we ask, but you have to trust the process. Now, what I do know is I'll get you close. I can't guarantee I'll get you there, but it'll be a lot better than where you are right now. But you have to trust me, and you have to trust yourselves and trust the process. But it all started, Seth, with that clean piece of paper. And that's where people make a mistake. When they start thinking about what they want, they first said, oh, I don't know what I want. Well, start putting down what would be the ideal. What would the ideal job look like? What would the ideal life be looking for you, the lifestyle that you want? Forget about what you know the world to be. Create it. In my last book, Lead, Sell, Get Out of the Way, when it comes to sales and influence, I always tell people, don't compete, create. It's all about creation. creating your destiny. And you can do that. But if all you're doing is creating it by thinking about what you know the world to be and what happened in the past, and all you're doing is creating the same results of the past, and people want to know why they keep going backwards.
You mentioned a couple times the T word, trust. And every branding book ever written says people buy from brands they know, like, and trust. You talk about the neuroscience of trust. What is that, and why is it so important, and how do we generate more of it?
So when I speak on stage, whether it's to leadership audiences or sales audiences, one of the things we say in the title of the book is that you can eliminate resistance, right? So, what I do is I'll take two salespeople, let's say, up on the stage, and I'll say, just start your conversation. 20 seconds later, I'll interrupt them. And I'll start talking about the three hormones in the brain that we talk about. So cortisol is the fight or flight. So the first thing you have to do as an influencer is understand that anytime you cold calling, or anytime even calling an existing client and they're not expecting you, you're an interruption. So when you're interrupting someone's day, their cortisol is going up, to where they're getting a little anxious and they're not really listening. Your job, number one, is to understand that going in. And number two, it is to create an environment that brings down that cortisol, not too low, but to a level where they're engaged and they want to talk to you. And what's the best way to do that? Make it about them, not about you. So what I'll do is I'll go to the salesperson, instead of talking about your products and services up front, that just elevates the cortisol even more. All you got to do is ask this one question. Like when it comes to copiers, as a communication vehicle, what are your three biggest challenges? And so we go for that, and all of a sudden the audience sees a whole different conversation. And I'll interview the person playing the buyer or an employee if it's in a correction conversation or whatever. And I'll say, well, here's the cortisol. Where was it at the beginning? They'll tell me. Did it go down? Yes. Were you engaged? Yes. Why? And I'll ask this one fundamental question. I said, when they asked you, what were the three things that was important to you about the challenges of the copiers? All of a sudden, they would say, oh my God, I stopped thinking about the person was trying to sell me. I was thinking about where I was trying to go. Were you emotionally involved? Yes, that's what you need to be. And I said, and then you calm down. Why did you calm down? And they would think about it, and they say, well, because it was no longer about them. It was about where I was going to go. And that's a topic that's at the heart of what's important to me. So then we bring in the second hormone, oxytocin. Oxytocin is a love trust hormone. Now, trust is earned, Seth, okay? But if you're asking the three things and someone's cortisol is out of whack, they're not giving you anything. But if you understand that your job is to create a safe environment for people to talk to you, and you do it properly, and you ask them what are the three things bothering you or you want to do or whatever, and they start giving it to you, then you're starting to earn a little bit of trust because you change the conversation to them or you. Now, you still have a lot more work to do. Don't get me wrong. You still got to deliver. And as you keep delivering, the trust keeps building. But that's what you have to do just to get into the game and to be considered. And then also the third hormone is dopamine, to feel good. Now, dopamine rides with oxytocin. You can't have dopamine without oxytocin. So I asked the people, when that question was asked, did you start feeling better about the conversation? They go, absolutely. So for the audience, they see it's a transformation. Now, how do you do this in leadership? It's the same thing. I was in a CEO's office one day, and a supervisor from the manufacturer came in, and he was like so upset. And I said, what's wrong? Guy's late. He's making everybody else late, and he's on his cell phone. I said, what'd you do? Tell him to get off the damn cell phone. What happened? He said, why should I? Everybody else is on a cell phone. What did you do? I told him to get off the damn cell phone and walked away. I said, how did that work for you? And I said, is the issue really the cell phone? He goes, yes. I said, no, it's not. That's the battle. You want to win the war. You're making a big thing out of something that's nothing. All right. What do we know about this person? What motivates them? Well, they want to be a master welder. What do you need for that? Quality and time. How's the quality? Perfect. That's why we love the person. How's the time? Usually good, but now he's 20 minutes late, so it could endanger his master welder, apprenticeship. So then you go up to him and you simply talk about the things important to him. You want to be a master welder, right? He goes, yeah. No, you need quality and time. Quality is perfect. Time, we're 20 minutes behind here. What do you think we can do to get you up to speed? And all of a sudden, miraculously, the guy started to give suggestions. The concept of the cell phone, Seth, never came up. And before you know it, they were back on time. That's the difference. And it's the same thing of what we just talked about with the three hormones being enacted based on the process I just described for you.
That is an incredible process and an amazing book. For our folks who are watching and listening, where is the best place for them to go to get the Velocity Mindset and learn more about all things Ron Karr?
Well, number one, they can get the book at Amazon.com. There are great prices on that. They also want to see videos that we put out every week and also maybe take this stab at a leadership assessment we put online. Simply go to velocitymindset.com. You can take that leadership. It'll ask you for your email. You'll get our videos every week. And really, that's the only place you need to go, to velocitymindset.com, because there'll also be a link for you to buy the book if you like.
All right. This has been Seth Greene for Sharkpreneur with Ron Karr, Velocity Mindset. Ron, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Seth.
Thanks, everybody, for watching or listening. We'll talk to you or see you next time.
Do you need money to fund your idea, product, or service? Are you ready to take your business to the next level, but need capital to get it done? Kevin Harrington has heard more than 50,000 pitches and knows how to help you make the perfect pitch to get the funding for your entrepreneurial dream. He's distilled the process down in his perfect pitch cheat sheet, and it's yours for free. Just text PITCH to him right now at 727-888-2100. Text PITCH to 727-888-2100 right now and claim your free perfect pitch cheat sheet. Text PITCH to 727-888-2100 to start funding your dream today.
This show has been produced by Market Domination, LLC. To discover how you can have your own show completely done for you and turn it into a real published book and become the authority in your marketplace, go to www.marketdominationllc.com/podcast offer.